Old friends.
Tell the people how we met, Phil. These were his customers. These were the people that were putting food on your table.
He would take care of them to no end. I was not well. I was an addict.
Yeah, they say that in addiction, that people are arrested in their development at the time that they begin their full-on addictions.
For me, it was about my relationship with my family, my relationship with my wife. Talk about friends. That's my best friend in the world.
Presence is a huge advantage to stopping putting poison in your body, essentially, isn't it?
Knowing that there's somebody looking out for you. Knowing that there's somebody looking out for you.
We fall down, but we get up.
Welcome back to the Hometown Friends, the podcast that brings a spotlight on the friendships that are foundational to our lives. My guest today is Dr. Philip Pearlman. He's a doctor of psychology, but he mostly worked in finance and behavioral economics. He authors the Prime Cuts newsletter, which focuses on cultivating a healthy lifestyle and mindset through the powers of creativity, reinvention, and grit. He's been an advisor to and an investor in social and digital media companies, and he has served as a chief business officer and chief marketing officer at multiple companies and banks. He was the executive editor at StockTwits and an interactive editor at Yahoo Finance. He currently runs a consulting company called the Pearl Institute, where he's an expert in the areas of personal health and effective processes of change. Phil and I met on a college campus, and the nickname he gave me was a prophetic label of my emerging self. In this episode, we cover the experiences of generational trauma in families and how children who grew up in these families are often the identified patients. We discuss the strong connection between the Jewish and the Black communities and how college friends are actually as foundational as hometown friends, and often even more so. We discuss how addiction and negative life experiences often lead to personal growth, creativity, professional endeavors, and success. I hope you enjoy this conversation, and if you do, subscribe and comment at the end to let us know what you think.
Dude, you're like the best one.
You're the best one. I love you, Phil.
Dude, mwah, I love you.
Great. Welcome to the Hometown Friends podcast. You and I have a relationship, and we've had a relationship since college.
Old friends.
Tell the people how we met, Phil.
So we met, I was a year ahead of you in college. I was living in Anne Arundel dorm, and I walked into my boy Jordan's room, I think, if I recall correctly. It's been a long time. This has been 40 years. I walk in, and here's this guy. We're in Maryland. We're 2 hours from any beach at the least, maybe more. And he's got surfboards. He's brought like 12 surfboards to college with him in this tiny little dorm that's the size of this office. And I'm just like, oh, you're Chummy Chandler's surfing pro. And he was like a surfing pro from Northern California. And we were friends. We were friends forever since that day. Instantly.
Yeah, well, you gave me my nickname, Phil. That day, you gave me Chummy, and my friends from college don't call me anything else but Chummy. Isn't that interesting how it works out that way, that I'm doing a podcast about friendship, and the first hour I was at University of Maryland with people on my dorm, my friend Philip Pearlman, Dr. Philip Pearlman, comes up to me, not a doctor at that point, and is the most chummiest person in the world. And he gives me a nickname that sticks with me till this day. That's a friend. That's an interesting part of a friendship that comes up.
It's a hometown friend as far as I'm concerned.
Well, let's talk about this, because my sense of what this podcast is all about is about friendship first, but about place too. Because identity and where you come from, where you feel at home, is very powerful. It's a very important factor in people's lives, where they feel. Place matters to people, where they feel at home. So wherever they feel at home, I think is home. So if you come from Pikesville, Maryland, if you come from Berkeley, California, which I really do feel like this is where I come from. I tried to represent when I came to college, Berkeley, although Berkeley's not much of a surfing town, but I had gotten into surfing my last couple of years of high school. So I brought my surfboard, which was a bit ridiculous because I did not really surf that much in the University of
But
Maryland.
it was cool though. It was cool. I bet you got chicks with those surfboards.
Not really. But
you got no chicks with those surfboards.
but that's how powerful identification is, right, Phil? So friends and home is what this podcast is all about in so many ways. I have always been curious to talk to you about Pikesville, Maryland, where you were born. Tell people where it's situated if they don't know where Pikesville, Maryland is. Tell them a little bit about the place itself.
It's northwest of Baltimore. Right off of sort of the Beltway. So if you're familiar with like the DC Beltway, there's a similar Beltway in Baltimore, goes around the city, and it's sort of northwest Baltimore County, maybe 8 miles, 6 miles northwest of the city.
Who lives there, Phil?
It's a Jewish area for the most part, and has gotten even more sort of, I think, religious, going back to the old neighborhood. The last time I was there, it had gotten much more orthodox than it was when I was there.
I'm just curious about the history there. Why did it become a Jewish neighborhood? And
I think it was just, in the same way a bunch of immigrants came to New York, a bunch of immigrants came to Baltimore.
Right.
And they settled in different places. And they had a super tight-knit group.
Give everybody a little bit of a peek into what it was like for you.
Remember Mnuchin? Remember
Sure.
the family, what was it? Structural family therapy.
Sure.
He was great, by the way. Those old films of Mnuchin. And I remember him, I remember studying him or watching some film. And I remember him talking about like sometimes the identified patient, so a mom brings a child in and is like, this child is terrible. The child is a mess. And meanwhile, it's the system that's totally fucked up. And the kid who is the behavior problem is the only one in the system who is like, hey, this is fucked up. Like he's the only one that has any sense that something's really off. Like he's the most normal one in the whole system, even though he's the black sheep, even though he's the identified patient. I always felt that way.
Wow.
I was in this system. Everybody was very anxious. We were the generation, our parents were the generation who were brought up with Holocaust survivors and relatives of people who didn't survive. And the level of anxiety in the house was constant and very high. Don't do anything or everything's going to be, something's going to go wrong or something's going to break. It was PTSD, anxiety everywhere you looked. And I was railing against that. I was like, fuck that noise. I'm not going to live that way. I got to get away. And now I understand it much better. I mean, it was survival to be that way.
Sure.
It was survival to be closed off. It was survival to be insular. It was survival to be anxious. There was dangers out there. It wasn't just paranoia or imagining. It was based on a past that had truth to it. So I get it now. Did not get it at the time. I was like, you people are fucked up. This is America. We're safe. What are you guys all worried about and crazy about?
Yeah.
That was my posture when I was 15. I think every place is different for every person. So, my brother probably had a different experience than me, and my next door neighbor had a different experience from me. And so my upbringing was uncomfortable and difficult. And I wasn't aware of it at the time. I was pretty oblivious, but I was not happy. I was angry. And so Pikesville really, and it's not the fault of the place. It's not like it was a horrible, dark place, but I don't have like a fondness, a broader sense of fondness to the place. And I don't feel like it was warm and I don't feel like it was a home of my choosing.
It could be it's a very painful place to look back on and identify with, it seems.
It's not a place I look forward to going, but it's not someplace that I mind talking about.
Tell us a little bit about your family and specifically your father, because I've heard a little bit of about your father, but I think it actually contributes to the kind of person that you grew up to be. You've told me some stories, and I want you to share some of those stories.
My dad was a good man. He worked hard for his family. He worked a lot and really wasn't around much. And he really didn't have the same type of influence on his kids that his wife had. And he went along with the program on the home front. So he was the boss in his work. And he ran a pharmacy, and then he also ran they built out of the pharmacy a wholesale beauty goods business.
It's not just beauty supplies, though, because there is something that is different about the beauty supplies, or the beauty supplies that he sold were primarily to African Americans and to that community. Is that correct?
My dad had a pharmacy with his brother. And by the way, my dad and my dad's brother were very, very close, and they lived together, had families together in the same house before they moved out to the suburbs to Pikesville, and they ran a business together forever. And the neighborhood, the pharmacy was in an African American neighborhood, and I used to go down there and work even when I was very young. I would go in the back and unpack boxes, and even when I was 11 years old, and then worked in the front of the store up until the time I went to college. And I always felt a super kinship to the people in that neighborhood and in that pharmacy. There were people who would come in all the time. There were other employees, and my father did too. My father, I don't know if he ever thought about it. I don't know if we even ever talked about this, that connection between the blacks and the Jews. I don't even remember, but I know it was there, and I know that my dad felt it too, because he felt very, very connected to that community.
These were his customers. These were the people that were putting food on your table.
He would take care of them to no end.
Yeah.
And, if there were people there that couldn't pay for something, he would make sure they got it, especially if it was a medication. And he would go check on people in the neighborhood to make sure they were okay. If somebody didn't come in, that usually came in.
Wow.
And I remember he had a driver called Harper, and they called him Harper VO or something like that because he was such a drunk.
Mm.
And he was a driver. And so one time,
like
into
delivering
Christmas, what's that?
To deliver things.
He was a delivery guy.
Yeah.
And one time he disappeared. And he went out and made a bunch of deliveries, got a bunch of money, and then he disappeared. And it was over Christmas. It was like during the holiday period. And then he showed up again, like in January. And he made up some story that he had gotten kidnapped. And he had gone on a bender, and he had spent all the money that he had taken in. And my dad made a deal with him. It was January. And he said, listen, if you can go the whole year without drinking, you can have that car. You can have the car that you're a driver. You have a car. It's a used car that we get. They were those old, like Chrysler, these old boats. They were big old American cars. Well, you could just have the car. And the guy quit drinking. The guy became so he was connected to the community. And I know I don't think I ever talked to him about it, but I know that I'm pretty sure that the connection that he felt to them was this spiritual connection based on the fact that we were both a people that had been deeply mistreated by the larger culture and was looked at in a really, really negative way.
So take us into a couple other places of Pikesville. I know, how about friendships from Pikesville? How about the people that you interacted with, the friends that you created from that place?
So I have two hometown friends that I'm still friends with today. One of them is my brother, who, when we were growing up, we didn't get along well. And I didn't, it was part of that family dynamic that I described before. I was basically like, this family is super fucked up, and I am just going to get out, and I'm going to save myself any way I can. But now we're close, and we sort of have just sort of come to terms with each other. I'm imperfect. He's not quite perfect. And we've come to terms with we've come to terms, and we appreciate each other, and we love each other, and we have so many shared experiences, and so much that we've been through together, and we know each other. And that's Vic. He's my older brother.
That is what a hometown friend is, why that hometown friendship is different than other people. They've known you for a long time, usually, and they know the iterations of yourself, like you were talking about in the beginning. They've witnessed you in different forms of oneself. And there's a difference there.
It's a great point, but I think that's a really great point. I do think, though, that there are other people, like I was saying, that Anne Arundel dorm at Maryland was a hometown.
Sure.
And I remember, our good friend Ritzer from there. I went on to grad school, and I went on internship in Rochester, New York. And I was there. I was by myself. I was an addict, and I was treating a very difficult population as a doctoral level intern. And I was severely depressed and having great difficulties. And Ritzer, who I didn't grow up with, but I knew him since the time I knew you, or even a little before, because I knew him for about a year longer than I knew you.
Yeah, you're older than I.
I was older. He was older than me. And he called me, and I didn't call him back. And then he called me like 2 days later, and I didn't call him back again. And he fucking knew me, because he called me again.
Nice.
And then I answered finally, and he was like, Phil, he knew something was wrong, and he was looking out for me.
Nice.
And he knew me. You know what I mean? Like, he really knew me, and he was looking out for me. I'll never forget that. Like, that is a hometown friend.
Friends are good any way they come. And the longer that you've had them, the more iterations that they've seen of you. So these hometown friends, wherever they come from, and we could argue that they come from where you were born, where you were raised in adolescence, where you went to college, where you settled with your own chosen family, on and on. But people who've known you, who've stayed in touch with you, who take an interest in you, who notice you, who see you.
You reminded me of something, and that is the profoundness of shared experiences. We had all these shared experiences already, and we knew who, like to your point before, we already knew who the other was well. And so that really was I think that, those were the things.
Yeah.
I was not a well person growing up.
Mm.
This is like, so when we were talking about doing this podcast, you got me really thinking about being younger, being in middle school and high school and college. And I was not well. I was an addict. I was alone. I was angry. I was disconnected emotionally from myself and from the world around me.
it's hard to reflect on that without having this feeling of negativity or feeling disconnected.
It was all a part of it. So everything was shaded by it. All
Yeah.
my relationships, my friendship relationships, all of my experiences, now looking back, were absolutely shaded by that.
And yet, Phil, you come into this place, you're this athlete, you've got a lacrosse stick. I'm attracted to you. You come into you're like Tigger. You come into my room, and you're like Chummy Chandler, surfing pro. And, you're friends with everybody. And you have all these friends from the dorm that we resided in. And so, yeah, we were all drinking and using drugs because many kids who go off to college do the same thing. But the people that you and I related to and had a group of friends were all doing that. So we were all doing it, and it actually was bonding and a bonding experience. And yet you've obviously, and I want you to tell the people where you've come from and how that's affected you over your life, because I know when you look back on it, you feel like there's a shade there of addiction and sadness, and now you feel different, and I want people to know how you feel different.
Like, there was always a part of me suffering. There was always a part of me that was not living for a long time. Part of me that was living, part of me that was not. It was never integrated. It was never a whole person. So it wasn't till about 6 years ago, and I was a CMO at an asset management firm in crypto, and I started to get myself really clean. It might have been a little bit before that. Might have been finishing with the bank. I was in a bank, and started getting myself clean. I started writing a newsletter about health, and I was on my own health journey. Finally getting sober. Finally giving up.
Can you say there's usually something that happens that creates that push for people?
Yeah, I really hit bottom. I was starting to pass out when I was drinking, and I was getting older, and I wasn't able to handle it the way that I was. And I recognized. I went out one night and passed out, and the next day I was like, fuck, like I'm going to die. And I was progressing, and I had been in sort of this holding pattern for a long time. And then it really began to progress. I had been a banker and traveled a lot, and I would go on these trips, and I would drink a lot, and it was fucking bad. And I was progressing, and and I was aging, and it was showing up and I would have died if I don't think I would be here today if I hadn't stopped, and if I hadn't started passing out on multiple occasions. I honestly think I'd be dead. And I just stopped. Like, I was like, okay. I had tried to stop multiple times. It hadn't been as bad. And so I was in time, thank goodness. Like, my oldest was maybe 12, 13. My youngest was maybe 10, 11. And they were in the home, and I was working from home a lot. So I had a real opportunity to get healthy, figure out who I was, and be a dad. That was hugely important.
And so what happened? What were the changes that you made?
So I went through this honeymoon period where I thought everything was fine, and I thought I was great and everything's perfect. It was like, what it was almost like? It was like some of the relationship psychologists use that term limerence to talk about the early moments of a relationship where everything's so exciting and everything's so. It was a little bit of like a limerence with my sobriety, real gung ho, telling people about it, and but that was kind of bullshit, because really what happened was, like, a year in or 2 years in, it was like, oh my God, I was stagnant developing for like 30 fucking years. And I got a lot to learn, develop, and digest and cultivate in me as a human a lot to catch up on.
They say that in addiction. Yeah, they say that in addiction, that people are arrested in their development at the time that they begin their full-on addictions, right? And thus, when you stop, you actually have to go back, if possible, and reintegrate oneself as a person that does not have an addiction, or that is not having, alcohol in their system, or is not living that way. That there's a stop there, but there's also this other thing which you're talking about, which is that we can go on. We can actually re-emerge as a different person, but also relearn the things about ourselves that we didn't learn before because we were in this addiction.
For me, it was about my relationship with my family, my relationship with my wife. Talk about friends. That's my best friend in the world. But I wasn't getting along with her. I wasn't fully there for her. And I wasn't fully open. And I wasn't fully loving her the best I could and allowing myself to be loved, importantly. Yeah. That's a big one with me because I never allowed people that close. So I had to learn all that. We went to therapy together and had to really and it was after I was already sober for a while. It was the first year I thought I was fucking awesome. I thought, oh, I'm all better now. I'm super fixed. I'm super Phil, I survived in this world with one hand tied behind my back. Now I got both hands. I'm ready to do everything, And it wasn't until I was a ways in that I really started to get that my antenna was fucking bent in a big way, that relational antenna. And then I had to figure that out. And I figured that out with her.
Presence is a huge advantage to stopping putting poison in your body, essentially, isn't it?
Knowing that there's somebody looking out for you. Knowing that there's somebody looking out for you.
I think a lot of people understand what addiction is. They've either been affected by it personally or they've seen it around themselves. And here we are again in a transformational opportunity for someone who has the light shining and yet now realizes through your story that your light can shine a lot bigger and brighter and more creative and really represent who you actually are, your best version of yourself through this process of quitting, of focusing on the downside and realizing that the upside is huge. So you made this transformation. You went through therapy with your wife. You became more present with your children. And then you created a business model about that experience, didn't you?
So I was getting all healthy again. And I was tuning into this part of me that had been dormant or dead for so long. This part of me that was a real part of me, that 12-year-old that was like an athlete, 14, 15. And I was tuning into that, and I was in the Keys, and I was reading this book Buddhism for Beginners or something like that, And it was talking about enlightenment. And there was this paragraph about enlightenment. And it was enlightenment is nothing mysterious. There's no, you don't have to sit under the tree and radiate. You just have to, it's just really more about remembering who you were when you were real, when you were you. And so I realized that I was oh my God, me embracing the athletic person is organic, real, and enlightened.
So returning to oneself in the purest form and the without these substances that are layering and covering up your true self, essentially.
Yeah.
And so how did that, now tell us a little bit about your concept of Fitness Alpha and what you're doing with that.
Alpha in finance, in money management. Alpha is this idea of outperforming relative to your benchmark. So let's say you're a money manager and your benchmark is the S&P 500. And the S&P 500 goes up one year like this past year in 2024, it went up like, I don't know, 20, 25%. Let's say it went up 25%. If you're a money manager and your fund is up 30% and your benchmark is 25%, that's 5% alpha. You outperformed your benchmark by 5%. And you could have negative alpha too. Let's say I was a money manager and my benchmark was the S&P 500 and I was only up 15%. I underperformed. That's negative alpha 10%. So alpha is this outperformance. There is a type of alpha in the market that in all performance, in all areas of performance, that nobody talks about. And we know it from so many different types of research. We know that people perform better the healthier they get. One thing that I experienced myself and that became very clear to me as I began working with people and helping people let go of addiction, let go of things that were holding them back, was that the healthier you get, mind, body, spirit. And again, I say that's one word to me. Mind, body, spirit. One word, not three words. And as people begin to get really healthy, mind, body, spirit, they begin to enjoy life more. They begin to perform better across multiple areas of their lives. And they begin to, live more deeply, connect with others, all these different levels. So this is the idea of Fitness Alpha. It's get healthy, perform better. Whether you're involved with markets, whether you are an entrepreneur, whether you're in any very competitive field, whether you're an advisor, whether you're anything that is difficult, The other thing about it is that it's easier for us as humans being, having myopia, being somewhat short-sighted. It's more difficult to relate to our distant future selves than it is to relate to ourselves right now. I mean, if we're scared now, we're feeling it. If we're unhealthy now, we're feeling it. If we're cold now, we're feeling it. If we're hungry now, we're feeling it. But 20 years from now, Phil, it's not so easy to imagine, even though it's almost as real. There's a high likelihood I'm still going to be alive in 15, 20 years. And so that person is real, even though it's not, but it's very hard to imagine.
It's very interesting, this model of Fitness Alpha. It's very interesting that you are really, that you take a very personal experience and create a model out of it. And I think we've all done that, right? Everyone who is successful probably takes something from what they know and create something very creative out of it. In fact, we would say this Hometown Friends podcast is exactly that kind of thing, right? My life has been about friendships. I get to college, somebody calls me chummy. I identify with that throughout my life. It has served me. And now I'm doing a podcast on hometown friendships and friendships in general. And I'm speaking to my very, very good friend, Phil Pearlman from college, which we argue is a hometown, a home place, a place that we felt connected to.
Dude, I'm so glad to hear you say that. I mean, I love you. And I consider you a hometown friend. Like I said, I had like 4 hometowns. And, College Park, Maryland was definitely one of them, definitely formative. And you're a close friend from there immediately. And you know what? I think there's something, and I'm sure you've talked about this like a number of times on your podcast, but there is like a shared spirit when people who are going to be friends, like what is the first, the first threads of a friendship that probably happens on some type of subconscious level within fractions of a second of people meeting is a common spirit, some type of like spiritual acknowledgement of the other sharing something with you.
Yes.
That you have a positive outlook on life, or that you have a creative bent, or that you have whatever it is, that you're psychologically minded, or whatever it is. And you hit on those notes, and then it's like, boom, there's a connection.
We all spoke sport language, and that was something that, and you, again, your high level lacrosse was extremely exciting. And
So you played lacrosse in California
yeah,
way back in the day. This goes back to the early 80s when you're in high school.
yeah.
There was really no such thing as lacrosse
No.
in California.
We were one of the first teams in our area. We had 4 teams in our division. There was not a lot of lacrosse in California, but you come from this place which steeped in 20, 30 years of deep lacrosse tradition. And that I knew was attractive to me. But moreover, to your point, it was your personality and your experience of growing up and feeling that outside nerdness. And maybe the deep pain that you were experiencing was even attractive to me because that was real. You were pretending, but you were also the depth of your personality was extremely attractive to me. And I always felt closer to you than a lot of people. There's certainly some really good friends that I continue to have very close relationships. And we've talked about Ritzer being one of them, and his wife, Erica, are some of my favorite people in the world. I was the University of Maryland mascot. You guys all cheered me on and gave me the confidence to go and to try out to become the turtle mascot. And I was the turtle mascot. And I had so much
Dude, we gave you great
fun.
encouragement there. We went to the thing where you were trying out in Cole Fieldhouse, and we cheered you on like crazy.
Exactly.
I remember that. It was fucking great.
This is why I probably became the mascot, because I went over to the crowd and put up my hands in the mascot suit, and the crowd went wild. And it was probably because I had 10 people from the dorm screaming, go Chummy.
Dude, that's awesome. That's so
And
awesome.
it was an amazing experience. It totally wrote the script for my college experience, is to have friends and then to have support and then to become an identified person in this University of Maryland community as the mascot to represent the University of Maryland on a national scale.
Dude, you would be on TV. Like, we would be playing a big game, and it's on, CBS, college basketball, and there's Chummy, man, doing a dance or making a little move.
I don't want to leave this podcast with this interview without saying how appreciative I am, not just of our friendship over the 30, 40 years that we've been friends, but more recently when I was coming up with this idea and no one was actually paying any attention to me when I would say, I want to do a podcast. My friend Phil said, do it, and do it unapologetically. And start putting things out there, Chummy. And without you, Phil, definitely would not have done this podcast. So I want to thank you for that. I want to thank you for your time and all your work in making people healthier and giving people fitness alpha and your unique brand of living life.
Dude, I love you. I'm so happy for you. And you are my brother. You are my hometown friend, or maybe my brother, or maybe both. I feel that way. And what you're doing is fantastic. I really believe that you are a foremost expert in friendships from the inside out. You know what I mean? I mean, there's like people who do this academically and study it. There was that poem called Happiness by, what was it, like Sandberg? And he was like, I went around, I went to the big captains of industry and asked them what happiness was, and they laughed at me. And I went to the university and I asked the professors, and they all laughed at me. And then I saw, a Hungarian family on a hill with an accordion and a keg of beer. And that's the end of the poem. You know what I mean? So you are the Hungarian family on the hill. You're really doing it. You're really excavating and studying it from the inside out, not in this sort of academic ivory tower way. So I think you are the foremost expert. That's my impression, and that's I'm glad I did the right thing to encourage you, because you're on a path that is creative and that is also incredibly valuable. I'm sure that people will look back at this series and be like, wow, you could study it. You could probably start plugging it into AI right now and asking about the themes. And you probably start to get I know some people that could help you with that. I bet you find that interesting. But I bet that that's true, that you would be uncovering themes that, the academics are not even touching on.
Well, I don't want to compare, but I do want to say thank you for encouraging me, and thank you for giving us your time today and telling your story.
It was great. We talk all the time. It just felt like a really good conversation with you. That's how it felt. I probably said some things today I haven't said before publicly, and I love it. So be it. Let's go. Open kimono.
Love you, Phil.
Thanks for listening to this episode. Friends that impact our lives can come from anywhere and be formed at any time. College friends are particularly sticky, as they are formed in a place where we are experiencing personal growth and at a time between where we came from and where we're going. As Phil and I discussed in this episode, they can even be considered hometown friends because we form these friendships in very similar ways. College friends are usually formed because of propinquity, or seeing each other every day, and become meaningful connections through the intensity of living together and the shared experiences that often make these friendships feel more like family. They often mirror the unique qualities of hometown friends because they're formed in late adolescence and they have the formative influence on our social development. Another personal discovery from this conversation is that Phil giving me the nickname of Chummy led not only to many playful and friendly connections throughout the college experience, but it also contributed to an essential crystallization of a sense of self. Looking back on it, I seem to embody this moniker, which validated a previously established identity of someone who values relationships, a natural psychotherapist, one who enjoyed learning about the human experience with a curiosity about the lives of other people. This personality type not only steered my personal relationships, it transformed into an approach of my professional life. As a psychologist, assisting divorcing parents resolve conflict and helping families have healthier relationships, my private practice is called Amity Consulting, and I seek to help my clients practice and achieve peaceful and friendly interactions so that they can meet the needs of their children. And the production of this podcast easily connects to a lifelong focus on friendship and an appreciation of the powerful impact that they have on our lives. This simple personal example shows that we can all look back on how childhood or adolescent experiences have shaped our lives. These realizations can lead us to having a profound feeling of integration and connection to the people that helped us define who we are. Making friends often seems random, but bringing more awareness to the process at different developmental stages can be a real game changer. Choosing those relationships that uplift you, reflect back what you love about yourself, and support you to become a better person are the ones to keep fostering. And these friendships will contribute to who you will eventually become. Have you had a similar insight or experienced a similar type of friendship? Let us know by subscribing to the podcast and leaving us a comment, or send us an email. We'd love to hear from you. Make sure to follow us on Instagram at Hometown Friends Pod, and stay tuned, stay connected.
We fall down, but we get up.